Well, it's interesting because when you actually ask people, and maybe they do, the provincial and federal governments are seen and do have a very important role in that. But I believe that obviously council does as well. We have seen the hollowing out of our downtown core. We own and have an arm's length economic development arm with Calgary Economic Development, and we are focusing on what is the economy in Calgary going to look like in the next 20 years. Oil and gas and energy will remain a foundation of our economy, but areas like agribusiness, logistics, financial services, creative industries, and tourism are going to form and should form some really big opportunities for growth in our local economic development.
The City of Calgary has an opportunity as a government to assist in bringing and attracting business, industry, and frankly residents to Calgary. One of the main things that it does is it helps fund and support Calgary economic development. And obviously in the current discussion over whether Amazon might come to Calgary, an organization like Calgary Economic Development plays a large role in being able to pull together the various sides of the community and the supports that we can use to bring Amazon in. Now, that's just one aspect. The city itself has to also help support bringing businesses here by making sure we have a very stable and effective tax regime. And that's an important additional facet.
The city needs to ensure that its policies clearly indicate that they're open for business. It also needs to provide the necessary infrastructure that will drive the entry into the 21st century innovation and knowledge economy. It's been identified that the biggest challenge in the 21st century for infrastructure is access to broadband. I propose that Calgary installs and builds their city-owned for-profit 10 gigabit per second fiber optic network. This will ensure that Calgary could become the next greatest startup. We could lure industries not typically associated with Calgary, multinationals, auto, huge bandwidth-dependent industries such as data centers, biotech, cybersecurity, and this will get us off the reliance upon a single industry of oil and gas. This proposal is future-proof and will ensure resilience for Calgary going forward.
One of the big challenges that we have right now in the current economic environment is that folks are feeling strained and at their limit on the amount of tax that they can provide. Nobody I've talked to says that they don't want to pay taxes. They just want to pay it at a level that makes sense for the services that we provide at the city. So the city really needs to provide all those important things such as water, police, fire, ambulance, storm, sanitary, all those fundamental things, garbage collection, recycling. But above all else, we have to get that done. The rest of it, it's great, but a city has to make sure that it gets those things done and that it does so at a reasonable rate so that people feel they're getting value for their money.
So Calgary is looking at a $170 million revenue shortfall coming up in 2018. So sound decisions really need to be made. Calgary is currently engaged in 500 different lines of business. The new council really needs to ascertain exactly what business Calgary should be in. Do we stay, do we outsource, or do we abandon altogether? In today's economic environment, the city has no choice but to re-examine spending practice and focus on essential services. I will advocate for examining alternative service delivery models, and I'm pushing for an entire digital transformation in how the city delivers services. By adopting these key two strategies, operating costs will be significantly reduced and the burden of tax will be reduced as well. Calgarians cannot absorb any more tax increases.
You know, as a part of our last budget cycle, we set our budget during a time when oil was $100 a barrel and there were 40,000 people moving to Calgary every year. There was a huge demand for infrastructure and services. As the bottom fell out of the price of oil, we began to respond and we began to worry like most Calgarians. There is still a need and a demand for services out there. When you think that 75% of our budget is fire, police, and transportation. And so when we've actually seen crime rates increase, which is happens as a result of many economic downturns that we see around the world. Do we want to cut police services as a part of that? I'm not hearing that at the door.
We can't afford to drive our sports teams out of the city, but we also can't afford to fit the bill. We have to find a value prop that's good for both. It's time that we need to think a lot bigger than just a single arena. We need to look at this in an overall larger picture. Where do we want to be? Research has clearly indicated that you cannot depend on the building of an arena to drive economic growth. However, there is clear research that indicates if the arena is integrated into a large-scale entertainment application, that's where it makes the difference. So I propose that we develop a new city center in the West End, one that encompasses conventions, amateur and professional sporting events, concerts, performing arts, all integrated with housing, recreational options, bars, restaurants, the lot, sky's the limit. And this will all be done with private financing. The Flames don't have to kick in a penny, and neither will the city. We could truly make Calgary become Canada's leading sports and entertainment destination, and this would be truly generational.
Calgarians appreciate that our arena that we have now is old. The Flames are a part of our civic identity. The trouble comes when we want to be a partner at the table and what is a revenue stream that the city can get back in terms of any investment we make. And what I'm hearing on the door is that without a revenue stream or a return on this investment that we may make, Calgarians are not interested in having a one-sided partnership.
Probably it doesn't matter so much as to where I stand, but I know when I've talked to people on the door, most people really like our sports teams, including the Flames. We want to keep them here. It's part of it's part of the cultural milieu. But what is important that we find a fair deal for everybody concerned. I think it's unfortunate that we've got the mayor and a principal at the Flames kind of duking it out in the media. I'd like to think that this is a business arrangement that could have been equitably worked out behind closed doors, but unfortunately we're now all part of it. Let's find a number that makes sense for Calgarians and for the Flames. Let's keep them here, and let's not overly burden the taxpayer in the process.
So, I mean, the biggest issues that are popping up are the economy, and actually the economy, which is really big, and traffic calming. More often than not, particularly in the inner city communities, you're seeing a lot of pressures on our transportation infrastructure. So actually, whether you are a parent having young kids, you're worried about how they can get across the street. We're worried about the speed through which cars are driving through our neighborhoods and all of those other pieces of transportation infrastructure. How we are planning to respond is we need to make investments in local traffic calming. And we have a pedestrian strategy that we passed in the last council. We need to fund that pedestrian strategy. And we need to continue to make these very local block by block investments in traffic calming.
What I've heard from folks at the door is that they're challenged by what they perceive to be a top-heavy, top-down planning process where we take the high-level documents like the municipal development plan, which is really important. We have to have those kind of plans, but we have an execution and delivery problem. So how do we take the high-level plan and have the rubber hit the road at the community level and do it in a fair and equitable way? So we need to listen to the local voice through the individuals and their community associations. We need to provide better opportunities for developers and local community members to get together so that in like a design charrette or other process, they can actually find out what the real issues are and try to find common ground. It won't always be achievable, and ultimately City Council has to make the decision, but I think we can do a better job getting everybody to work together in a collaborative way.
The biggest issue is fair taxes. The city is implementing a very robust densification and infill program. And the biggest challenge with this is once the new lots get subdivided and then built upon, assessments for the offsetting homes are skyrocketing, thereby increasing property taxes. This is absolutely not fair to the existing residences in these mature neighborhoods. They should not have to bear the burden of municipal policies. So what I propose is assessment values need to be frozen on the existing residents' homes until they move out, and this can be offset with introducing for example, a property surcharge on extremely high valued homes in, say, over $2 million, and also large square footage homes. So for example, there's a house going up at the top of Mount Royal. It's 20,000 square feet. And I don't really think it's fair that they're paying the same tax rate as someone that's paying the taxes on a less than 1,000 square foot home.